The next Monday smelled like metal and orange cleaner. Down in the boiler room, the real heart of the hotel, where heat throbbed through pipes like blood, Lila stood with Omar as a maintenance tech named Hector showed her the panels, the gauges, the spots where trouble liked to hide. "This place," Hector said, tapping a pressure dial with a knuckle, "will tell you what's wrong if you listen. But people upstairs like to pretend the building is magic." "I don't," Lila said. "I want to know where it hurts." He smiled and gestured to a metal grate. "Every system has a relief valve. You open it, or it opens itself." She tucked that away like a proverb and climbed back up into the brightness. The lobby was quiet in the way a stage is quiet before a performance. Everything in place, everyone waiting for the doors to open, the air holding its own breath. She could feel the city thinking about the week, choosing who it wanted to be. On her desk, still the old back office near the kitchen, even though a corner suite was waiting upstairs, Priya had left a folder clipped with a red tab and a note. "Covenant Review. Friday, 10 a.m. They're jumpy. We must be clean." Underlined twice. A second note in different ink. Caldwell CC'd himself on an email chain he shouldn't have seen. "He's fishing. Watch him, he was already watching." At 10, a man with an official badge appeared at the host stand that had been Lila's post a lifetime ago and asked, politely, almost shyly, for the manager on duty. He was a health inspector. "Surprise inspection," announced like an apology. "Of course," Lila said with a smile full of teeth, "and welcome. We'll walk together." She and Chef Miriam shadowed him through the kitchen. Knives lay in a precise silver quire. Cutting boards gleamed. Thermometers popped into chicken breasts and came out whispering 165 degrees. The inspector frowned at a box of spinach sitting on a low rack. A line cook slid it into the refrigerator like a card trick, smooth and quick because he knew the rule and had simply broken the choreography. The inspector made a note. He made 3 more, small things: drain trap, a gasket that needed love, one unlabeled prep tub that Miriam relabeled as if it had always been clear. Outside the back entrance, Lila spotted Caldwell watching the inspector's progress reflected in a truck's chrome bumper. He wasn't in the kitchen. He wouldn't get his shoes dirty if he didn't have to. He stood with the phone at his ear and a look that was not quite a smile. When he saw her looking, he lifted 2 fingers from his lapel, an almost salute as if to say, "Welcome to the actual game." By noon, they had a B taped to the window where the kitchen door opened onto the staff corridor. It would go back to an A by tomorrow, the inspector assured them. They'd fix the 4 minor issues and submit proof. But the B was a bruise, and Caldwell made sure the bruise was seen. An email at 12:06 p.m. to the internal list. "Transparency matters. Current. Status of Health Department grade," with a screenshot of the notice and a paragraph about vigilance that read like a sermon, preached by a man who'd burned down a church and was now selling fire extinguishers. "Accident?" Priya asked, eyebrows up. "Or a friendly shoulder tap at the department," Miriam muttered, soft enough to be ignored and loud enough to count. They worked until dusk turned the lobby's marble the color of old teeth and the chandeliers went from decorative to necessary. The kitchen earned back its A by the end of the next day, but Caldwell's message had done its job. 2 minor luncheons called to postpone. A travel blogger with a thin smile and heavy eyelids published a piece about the chaos at Crest. Lila stopped reading after paragraph 2. The comments underneath were a chorus of certainty from people who'd never stepped behind a host stand. Some nights that certainty was heavy as lead. Tonight she let it fall off her like rain Tuesday. 8 a.m., numbers with Priya and Jonah. The red tab folder sat between them like a loaded question. "Debt service coverage ratio," Priya said, tapping a column. "We need to be over 1.25x on a trailing 3-month basis by Friday. Right now, we're at 1.18x. Close, but close doesn't count with this lender." "It's a covenant test, not a final exam," Jonah said, but his voice didn't loosen the rope in the room. "We can increase revenue or reduce expenses," Priya said. "Cutting is faster. Revenue is stickier. Not cutting staff meals," Lila said. The sentence jumped the line before she could check it, but she didn't want to call it back. That stays. It keeps the place human, Priya nodded. I put it in the do not touch column. Jonah looked at Lila with a gratitude so quick she almost missed it, like a small bird darting out and back. What can we actually cut? Outsourced laundry, Priya said. We bring half of it in-house for a month and suffer. Not glamorous but doable. 2 vendor contracts renegotiated for a temporary rate. Freeze non-essential capital projects. No rug replacement. The hallway in 17 will remain ugly. And revenue? Lila asked. Weekends, Priya said. We sell them out. We do what you did with The City Breathes, but bigger, faster, louder, without losing our soul and without comping the planet. We'll take a breath that carries, Lila said, half to herself. They built a plan that felt like a bridge laid between cliffs while they were already halfway across. They sent emails that weren't just emails, they were little doors held open. They called vendors and asked them to be partners instead of predators. Some agreed with relief. Some said, talk to accounts. Priya talked to accounts like a woman who knew where to place her voice to be heard. At 3, Renee poked his head in. Problem, he said, and smiled miserably to reduce its power. Our payment processor flagged the weekend packages for unusual velocity. They suspended the release of funds for 72 hours. They can't, Priya said, flipping to a section in her mind and then out loud. They can, actually. It's in the fine print we all pretend not to see. How much? Jonah asked. 212,000 as of now, Renee said. We'll have 300 by morning. It's like they're holding the oxygen in a separate jar. Lila closed her eyes for one beat. What if we pre-sell in person? Voucher cards like the old days, she said. Cash or check. Or a different processor for a short run. We'd be old school and modern at once, Renee said, already opening a spreadsheet in his head. We can print beautiful vouchers in housekeeping's color printer. Watch the treasury laws, Priya warned. No illegal scrip. Legal scrip, Lila said. Gift certificates with clear terms. Redeemable through December. Transferable. Not refundable. Everyone in a 5-block radius knows someone who wants a city staycation if we make it feel like permission to rest. By 6 p.m., the side door that Omar called the cry door had a new use, a line out to the alley of people buying paper promise slips to future peace. The night porter's aunt set up a card table. Omar's strawberries on socks drawer became a ribbons on vouchers drawer. A teenage cousin stamped each card with a star that wasn't perfect and therefore felt like hope. Caldwell stood by the mezzanine again, talking too long to a man in a navy suit who looked like he ate spreadsheets with breakfast. Lila recognized the lender's logo on the briefcase. She couldn't hear them, but she could read posture. Caldwell a little forward, a little greasy with charm. The banker back on his heels, measuring whether to be persuaded. She wondered what story Caldwell told when he was trying to sell a catastrophe as prudence. At 10 that night, after the vouchers were counted and the cash was locked in a box with a chain that made Lila feel both safe and like a pirate, Priya called. I think I found something, she said without preface. A side letter. Caldwell and a fund called Hexley Capital. The short version. If a technical default is triggered and Crest Hospitality is forced to sell the Meridian debt, Hexley gets first look and a sweetheart discount. Caldwell gets a consulting contract with them post-sale. The term success fee appears. It's foul. Lila stared at the far wall as if an answer were written there in bleach. How sure? 80%, Priya said. I don't have the inked copy. I have an email chain and a calendar invite from 2 months ago that shouldn't exist. The subject line is Hexley, Options Review. Caldwell's assistant accepted. The location is Private Club. The room felt briefly airless. This was the kind of truth that didn't need decoration. It was ugly enough on its own. Does Victoria know? Lila asked. She knows now, Priya said. I texted her the moment I picked my job. She said, bring me proof. Proof came from the place it always seems to come from. The small, the overlooked, the thing somebody else decided didn't matter. Omar knocked on Lila's office door at midnight with a shoebox. "I am a man who loves paper," he said, placing it on the desk with ceremony. "Sometimes I take a picture of paper before someone can lose it." Inside the shoebox were 50 envelopes, neat as soldiers. Each contained photos, binder pages, guest complaints, maps to where the floor squeaked on 17. A post-it from 5 years ago that read, "Do not let Mr. Carter into the kitchen. He steals bread." On top, a glossy 4/6, the missing 11:02 p.m. binder entry from the night of the storm. Lila's handwriting in neat dark loops, 11:08, escorted Mr. J. Crest to penthouse. Key missing. MasterCard used. Will log system at 06U0. LP. Below it, a second photo, a time-stamped shot of Caldwell taking the binder from the overnight supervisor. His head was turned. You could see his profile, enough for identification. The camera was the kind mounted to catch people stealing forks. How? Lila breathed. Omar shrugged as if confessing he alphabetized his spices. "I like the feeling of backup." She hugged him, brief and fierce. "You just saved us hours," she said. "Maybe more." "Do not say that," Omar said, flustered. "I just like paper." They printed the photos large and crisp. Priya drafted a memo with footnotes you could use to climb a mountain. Jonah read it all, eyes cool, mouth steady, sober in every way a person can be. "Tomorrow," he said, "we show Victoria. We give her a choice. We make a plan B in case she flinches." "She won't," Lila said, surprising herself again with her certainty. "Won't what?" Jonah asked. "Flinch," she said. "She's steel. She just needs the right temperature to bend." He laughed softly. "And I'm— what?" "You're a match," Lila said, and didn't feel like she'd overstepped. He looked down, then up. "Can I show you something?" he asked, voice quieter than the hum of the old office fridge. "Of course." They climbed to the penthouse because the penthouse had become, somehow, less a symbol of distance and more a room they used to think in. It was empty, except for the piano and a bowl of peaches someone kept replacing. The city spread below like a circuit board. Jonah crossed to the piano and lifted the fallboard. He didn't play. He reached under, behind the front panel, and pulled out a long envelope. White, thick, the expensive kind that makes your heart race because you know it holds an event. Resignation. Embossed in one corner the word Lila had seen on the elevator that night and then made herself forget. "I was going to leave the board," he said, flat, not dramatic. "Walk away. Let my mother eat Caldwell before he ate her. Vanish into some place where my money couldn't reach me and my name couldn't make noise." "Would that have made you okay?" Lila asked. He swallowed. "No, but it would have made me gone, which is different and tempting." "Why didn't you?" she asked. He held her gaze. "You stayed." He opened the envelope. Inside, a typed, signed letter. Effective date blank. The space where you put a date looked like a small room that hadn't been furnished. "If Caldwell gets me to file this before Friday, lenders can claim a key person change," he said. "It won't trigger default on its own, but it will make them itchy. He knows it. He'll try to push me to hand it in. He'll say I am the scandal. I should leave to protect the company. He'll make it sound noble." Layla thought of that impulse, the urge to immolate yourself on a problem so other people can warm their hands, and felt an anger that wasn't the burning, hot kind but the cold, focused kind that gets work done. "If he tries, bring it to me," she said. "We'll set it on fire together." He smiled, a tired, genuine thing. Deal. They didn't set it on fire the next day. They didn't have to, not yet. At 9, Victoria accepted the photos and the side letter emails with the same expression she gave to weather reports. Skeptical. Attentive, annoyed that weather existed. "Caldwell," she said, when she finished reading. It wasn't a question. It was an indictment. "Call legal," she told Priya. "Prepare a removal. Quiet for now. We'll do it without spectacle. He likes spectacle. We'll starve him. Lenders?" Priya asked. "I'll deal with them," Victoria said, and for a moment Lila saw the woman people called ruthless with admiration and fear. We will walk into Friday clean. Clean turned out to be harder than a memo and a promise. Thursday morning, a gossip site published a story with a headline that felt like a slap. Waitress wins hotel. While Crest Air slips, inside the trust that's making lenders nervous. It was littered with incorrect facts and one correct, ugly detail. A quote from an insider claiming Jonah had been under the influence in the penthouse while a staffer stayed all night. The implication was safe as long as you spoke it with a smirk. Lila's phone lit up as if someone had rolled it across the sun. She put it face down. She looked at Jonah, who looked at the floor for a long time and then looked up and said simply, "I'm not drinking." He said it in a tone that made it a tether rather than a plea. "I know," Lila said. "We know. At noon, Caldwell sent her an invitation. The subject line, clarify. The body, roof, 12:30, private. If he thought the roof was neutral ground because it was high, he hadn't watched enough movies. Don't go alone," Priya said. "I won't," Lila lied. Then she went alone. The roof was the city in 360 degrees, the skyline a fistful of tools. Caldwell stood by the half wall, hair laid just so by a comb and ambition. He gestured as if introducing a guest. "The view is soothing," he said. It helps with perspective. She did not go to the edge. She liked the center of things. She stood with her feet planted and her hands in her pockets like keys. "You wanted to clarify." He nodded, as if they were in a library together. "You're out of your depth," he said pleasantly. "The lenders are. Conservative. They fear your experiment. They prefer dull cruelty to vibrant risk." "We're not a risk," Lila said. "We're a hotel." "You're a symbol," he corrected. "That's worse. Symbols make bankers itch." "I don't care if they itch," Lila said. "I care if they stay fair," he laughed. "My dear, fairness is an indie film that never got distribution." "Hexley," she said. Side letter. He didn't flinch, which meant he was very good or very cornered. "Allegations," he said mildly. "Very serious. You should be careful, Ms. Perez. You're cute when you're angry. You're dangerous when you're wrong. You ordered a camera update at 10:57, she said. You took the binder at 10:50. You erased a page to manufacture a problem you could solve. Then you circulated an email about transparency because you like your lies to smell like lemon soap." His eyes chilled. "If you had evidence, you would have used it already." "Maybe I'm saving it," she said. "Like money. Like breath," he smiled without teeth. "Then let me clarify. If you persist, I go to the lenders with a package, your lack of experience, your philosophy, and a little audio from a call your friend Jonah made 2 weeks ago. After his third Manhattan, he called our covenants leashes for bored men and asked if anyone in the room had ever done a real day's work. He was colorful. Drunk, she said. Not an apology. A fact. Juries love facts, he said. So do lenders. They love the kind that suggests this place is a circus. Your trust? It makes them nervous because it smells like untested. The audio will make it smell like irresponsible. I will regretfully deliver the resignation letter, explain that Mr. Crest is stepping down for the good of the company, and suggest, very politely, that the trust be unwound. It will sound like reason. Reason has better PR than idealism. She could feel the anger arrive again, the cold, useful kind. You speak about reason like a man selling poisonous tea. He shrugged, half-bow. The hotel doesn't care who owns it. The chandeliers just want dusting. You don't care who breathes, she said. Numbers don't breathe, he replied gently. They only add. He moved closer, too close. Not threatening in a physical way. She wasn't afraid of his body, but imposing in the way a man who has gotten away with too much tests the air. Do you know why I'm so good at this? He asked. Because I am willing to be the villain. People like you want to be beloved. It's your weakness, she smiled, slow. I don't want to be beloved, she said. I want the room to breathe. Then take a breath and step aside, he said. sudden steel. "Step down now. Let adults fix this. Or I hurt him, and you, and all your little staff darlings with their socks and their casseroles. I will hurt you with paperwork and rumors and perfectly legal letters. You will drown in process." She looked at the sky. It was the pale, pitiless blue of a midweek afternoon. She looked back at him. "I won't step down," she said. "If you want to drown me, come and try." He studied her for a long moment, filing her away under a word he'd never use out loud. He nodded as if they'd agreed to meet again for tennis. "Friday will be illuminating," he said. He left first. She stayed, not at the edge, at the center. She felt her hands shake and wasn't ashamed of it. On the stairwell down, she made 3 decisions in 2 flights. Tell Victoria everything. Find the audio before he uses it. And refuse, absolutely refuse, to offer Jonah's vulnerability as collateral. Friday came like a drumbeat. By 10 a.m., the main conference room on 47 had collected the kind of people who always look like they just left a better room. The lender's representative in a navy suit that invented navy, 2 associates from his shop whose skin was the color of fluorescent light, Priya with her hair pulled back like a line of defense, Victoria composed like a statue with a pulse, Jonah in a tie he kept touching like it was a good luck charm he didn't trust, Lila in her thrifted blazer and flats and the expression she'd learned at the host stand, the one that said, "I see you, I'm not afraid." Caldwell arrived last. He carried a leather portfolio the size of a promise and set it down with a soft, expensive thud. He smiled at the lenders like a man who knows which forks to use in any century. "Shall we?" the lender said, and the room arranged itself into order. Priya went first, a short, clean presentation in which the numbers did not move, but their meaning did. Occupancy up. Bar revenue up. Expenses down in the right places, not down where people bleed. A picture of the weekend on one slide, which Lila would not have included, but Priya used it deftly. Not as a plea, as proof of a thesis. The lender's associates typed. The lender's right eyebrow twitched at the DSCR line, 1.224x as of last night's count. "1 hair short of required. Our payment processor suspended funds," Priya said calmly. "Those release on Monday. If they had not, we'd be at 1.227x today. We cannot test what isn't in the account," the lender said. Boredom varnished over the sentence. "We brought in legal, in-person sales to make up for the gap," Priya continued. "Here are the deposits, time-stamped, banked." One associate raised a hand as if the room were a kindergarten. "Corporate policy says electronic only." "Your covenants say cash flow," Priya said. "These are cash flows." Lila watched the men watch the paper. She could feel Caldwell getting ready to pounce. He opened his portfolio as if warming up his argument and slid a thumb over a manila tab labeled, neatly, Media. "Before we weigh extenuating. Improvisations," he said, tone so reasonable it made the word feel like a clean hand. The lender should hear the context. New management is novel, unorthodox. The trust is admirable, but unconventional. Mr. Crest has made statements, recently, that suggest a lack of appreciation for the discipline of our covenants. He produced a phone, tapped, and the air filled with Jonah's voice, distorted by a cheap recording app, flattened by alcohol but unmistakably his. Leashes for bored men. "Anyone in the room ever done a real day's work? We build palaces for people who can't sleep in the homes they bought to feel alive. It wasn't vile. It wasn't cruel. It was messy. It was the kind of messy that clips well, that fits neatly into someone else's argument if you don't let it breathe." Lila looked at Jonah. He sat very still. His eyes were on his own hands, like he was listening to a man from a long time ago and deciding whether to forgive him. The lender's face turned into a polite stone. "We take tone into account," he said, which really meant we take any excuse into account if it fits our mood. Caldwell slid the second tab open. Resignation. "Furthermore," he said, with an almost sadness that made Lila's fingers curl, "Mr. Crest has prepared to step down from the board. He has not filed this yet. But the intent is clear. Lenders appreciate stability. This is not that. Jonah looked at Lila. It was a small glance and a large question. Do we fight with this? Do I let them use me? This was where the choice lived. The kind that isn't about a single door, but about what kind of building you want to walk through for the rest of your life. She could take Caldwell's weapon and aim it differently, confess on Jonah's behalf, make the lenders feel like they'd extracted a ritual humiliation and were therefore safe to be magnanimous. Or she could refuse to trade a person for a rate and risk the whole room deciding she was naive. She stood. No one asked her to. The lender looked mildly irritated. Caldwell looked delighted. Priya looked ready to kill with words. Victoria looked, for the first time since Lila had met her, not unbendable, but alive, like someone who'd come into a church expecting work and found a miracle half assembled. "May I?" Lila said, and did not wait for permission. Mr. Pierce is right about one thing. Lenders like stories where numbers behave and people do not. It lets them feel taller. Here is our story instead. A building is not magic. It has a relief valve. If you block it, pressure finds another path. Staff meals are our relief valve. So is telling the truth. She nodded at the phone that still held the ghost of Jonah's whiskey. Mr. Crest said those words. He doesn't remember saying them. He also doesn't drink today. He is doing something hard in public, which is expensive in a currency you don't track. Leashes for bored men is a rude phrase for a reasonable point. Covenants are blunt tools. They measure without context. We are asking you to look at context, not because we want to be indulgent, because it is how reality works. She let the silence arrive and then set down a paper that was not in Caldwell's portfolio. The photo of the binder page and the photo of Caldwell taking the binder. She did not put them in the center. She slid them to the lender, just far enough that he had to reach. "This is context," she said. "Your insider, who worries about novel management, made a hole in our ship and then sold maps to the lifeboats." He ordered a camera update and removed a page from the night log to create a narrative of impropriety, then wrote emails about transparency. He has a side letter with Hexley Capital that pays him if you call default. He wants you itchy. The lender didn't touch the photos. He looked at them like a man looks at a dessert he didn't order and doesn't trust. Then he reached, quick, and pulled them close. The associates leaned in. Priya slid the email printouts across like small knives. Caldwell laughed, precise, brittle. "Allegations," he said again, but the word had lost weight. "Legal has a draft removal," Priya said, very calm. "We would have filed it already, but sparing you spectacle seemed polite." Victoria lifted her hand. "Enough," she said, "but it didn't mean be quiet. It meant it's my turn." She turned to the lender. "You want your ratios. We will give you your ratios. You want stability. You'll get it. I will personally guarantee the covenant for this quarter and next." She raised a brow. "Unless you'd like to take on the PR of pushing a technical default at a hotel whose staff is currently feeding their co-workers and neighbors and selling out weekends to people who live within bus distance. Your logo underneath we killed. That seems unwise." It was not a threat. It was a description of how the world would read if the lender insisted on pretending numbers were bigger than bodies. The lender took a breath shaped like opportunity. He nodded once, minimal enough to be deniable. "Provisional," he said, "with a follow-up test on the first. And a written guarantee on my desk by close of business." "You'll have it," Victoria said. "And Caldwell?" The lender added with a politeness so sharp it could shave. "If there is. Confusion in your own house. We prefer it be sorted." "It is being sorted," Victoria said, and her smile was the kind you use for surgeons and devils. Caldwell stood very still, then moved as if his joints needed oil. "Mrs. Crest," he said lightly, "you won't find proof. I'm careful. Everyone thinks that," Priya said, "until they discover Omar." "Omar?" he repeated, confused. "Omar loves paper," Lila said. The meeting dissolved the way rooms do when the main decision has been made, and now details must be chewed. The lender and his associates gathered their laptops like shields. Victoria wrote the guarantee in a firm hand and then handed it to Priya to turn into a thing bankers believe in. Jonah folded the resignation letter and slid it back into his pocket, not to keep as a threat but as something to decide about later, on his own terms. Caldwell said nothing else. He left without saying goodbye, which told Lila everything she needed to know about the speed of his fall. In the hallway afterwards, Lila stood with her back against cool wood and let the adrenaline ebb. Jonah leaned next to her, close but not touching, like two soldiers sharing a canteen. He laughed once, disbelieving and utterly alive. "You refuse to sell me," he said. She looked at him. "You're not an asset." "Bankers disagree," he said. "You're a person," she said. "We build this around that, or we don't build it." He nodded and pressed his fists to his eyes, a gesture that looked like a man trying to make light press through thinner skin. "I need a meeting after this," he said, voice rough and raw with honesty. "The kind with coffee in a church basement and people who remind me that I am not special." "I'll drive," she said. He smiled. "You don't have to." "I want to," she said simply. They didn't get to go right away. At 2, security called the office with the professional calm of people used to small fires. "We have police in the lobby," the guard said. "They have a warrant." "For what?" Lila asked, already moving. "Financial records," the guard said. "A complaint alleging misappropriation of funds." Anonymous. Caldwell had moved faster than she'd hoped, or slower than he'd planned. Either way, he'd called in a bigger gun. The officers were polite in the way people are when they are about to do something you will not enjoy. They presented paper with a stamp. They asked for files that did not exist because Priya kept clean books, and the miracle of this week was that their lies were small and their truths were growing teeth. Priya arrived in 7 minutes flat. Hair still in its war knot, smile ready to be used as veil or blade. She read the warrant like she was humming a tune she knew well and then led the officers to the records room. She narrated as they walked, her voice even. "We're cooperating fully. We maintain electronic and paper records. We'll provide digital copies and retain originals. You'll sign for what you take. We'll schedule a follow-up. Coffee? It's staff coffee, but my chef makes it strong." The officers softened by degrees. People always do when they are treated like guests in a place they expected to be enemies. It didn't make the moment less dangerous. It made it survivable. In the doorway, Caldwell hovered, hands behind his back, face arranged in concern. He looked at Lila as if to say, "See? Adults." She looked back as if to say, "We will outlast you. We will outlove you. Both are work." By evening, the officers left with a box and a receipt and a small suspicion that someone had wasted their time. Priya sat on the edge of a desk and rubbed her eyes. "He's going to try the press again," she said. "Maybe tonight. To make it seem like the police were here for other things. He likes to move the light, not the furniture. Then we put our own light up," Lila said, "and we leave the furniture where people won't bump into it." "How?" Renee asked from the doorway, cheeks flushed with the effort of running a hotel and an ad hoc printing press. "Tonight," Lila said, "we do a town hall, not a press conference. Those are for shows. We do a staff-first gathering in the ballroom, and we invite anyone staying at the hotel who wants to hear how their bed gets made. We explain what's happening in plain words. We don't talk about rumors. We talk about what we're building." Jonah blinked. "We tell the truth," he said, not fully a question. "We make the room breathe," she said. At 7, the ballroom filled with bodies that would normally be invisible to each other. Housekeepers hand in hand with guests in linen, bellmen next to bloggers. The doorman's granddaughter perched on the riser steps with a packet of crayons someone had pressed into her hand. 2 men from the lender's office hovering near the back because curiosity had made them forget decorum. Chef Mariam stood by a folding table that looked like a feast anyway. Omar had a stack of vouchers like a magician's deck. The stage felt like an ordinary stage. Lila didn't take it. She stood on the floor. She could feel the hotel listening. "We're trying an experiment," she began, and then stopped herself, smiled. "No, we're running a hotel. We're doing it with some different defaults. We feed each other before we feed the fiction that work should be punishment. We tell the truth before we fix the numbers. We ask our lenders to look at context and not just columns. A ripple of laughter. The lender's associates mouthed. We heard that to each other and scribbled. People are going to say things about us, Lila continued. Some will be true. Some will be edited, like bad movies. You'll hear that I'm naive, that Jonah is reckless, that Mrs. Crest is vain, that Chef is a tyrant. Miriam booed herself. The room laughed. That Omar steals socks. Wide grins. We don't run on rumor. We run on rooms. We will keep ours humane. She felt the nerves ease, hers and the room's, as if a muscle had finally gotten the message. She looked at Jonah and raised an eyebrow. He shook his head once, a small, private. Please don't. That might have meant don't make me speak or don't make me a symbol. She honored it. She opened the floor. People asked questions like they were handing her small, fragile things. Will my hours change? No. Will the staff meal stay? Yes, and better. Will vouchers be honored if the sky falls? If the sky falls. We'll eat under it together, and your voucher will be a ticket to the best picnic you ever had. Laughter. A woman in a green dress asked if she could still get a quiet room if the band in the lobby played late. Yes, tell us. We will make quiet for you. Caldwell stood near the side door like a man waiting for a taxi that never comes. He checked his phone, frowned, texted, frowned. Either his leak wasn't landing or it was drowned out by a louder, human noise. After the crowd thinned, after the last cookie was wrapped for later, after the night Porter's aunt hugged Lila with the kind of hug that leaves a handprint of flour on your back, Priya came up the aisle at a jog. Hexley just blinked, she said, breathless and delighted. Their counsel called mine. They're re-evaluating their position and monitoring the situation. Which is law, for we thought we would get a deal and now we might get a subpoena. Can we? Renee began. We're not gloating, Priya said, but she smiled anyway, a quick, sharp flash. Lila turned toward the doors leading out to the terrace. The night was thick and hot, the city a softer roar. Jonah stood with his hands in his pockets again, looking at nothing in particular and everything at once. She joined him. He didn't look at her. She didn't mind. Do you still want your meeting? She asked. He nodded. Yes, I'll drive, she said. Now? Now. They didn't take the hotel car. They took Lila's needing-a-wax sedan that smelled like cinnamon because of a spice spill 3 summers ago. The drive to the church basement took 11 minutes and 1,000 years. They sat in folding chairs under fluorescent lights. The coffee tasted like discipline. People said their names and their days and their reasons for not pouring poison into an old wound. Jonah said, "Hi, I'm Jonah," and no one flinched at his last name because last names weren't the point. He talked about leashes and rooms and shame like fog, and then he listened. Leela did not speak. She wasn't there for that kind of speech. She was there for the practice of sitting near someone you cared about while they chose life in a small, unphotogenic way. After, they walked back to the car under a sky that had remembered stars. "Thank you," he said. Before he got in. "For what?" she asked, hand on the roof like she was steadying the car or herself. "For refusing to sell me," he said again, as if the gratitude needed multiple attempts to fit his mouth. "For making room." "We're all somebody's relief valve," she said. "Sometimes I'm yours. Sometimes you'll be mine. Sometimes we'll both be the building and the water inside it. It's messy," he laughed, quiet. "I like messy." "Messy keeps us honest," she said. She dropped him at the hotel and went home to an apartment that smelled like sleep and the plant she had managed not to kill this time. She took out the slip of paper with her father's name and put it on the table next to the bowl where she kept her keys. She slept like someone who had decided not to die that day. Morning came with coffee and a news cycle that had, for once, failed to catch fire where Caldwell had tried to strike a match. He wasn't done. Men like him never are. But something had shifted in the building's bones. At 9, Victoria called Leela to the corner suite that had been offered to her since Monday and that she had declined because the back office felt like church. The windows made the river look like a blade. Victoria had her jacket off, sleeves rolled just so, a posture that said the day would respond to her, not the other way around. "I want to show you something," she said. She opened a drawer in the wide desk and pulled out an old Polaroid, the colors gone somewhere else and returning now as ghosts. Two men stood in front of a hotel that was not the Meridian but could have been its distant cousin if buildings had families. One man was young in the way youth used to be, serious mouth, hopeful eyes. The other wore a janitor's uniform and a grin that refused to be trained out of him. "My father," Victoria said, tapping the first. "And your father," she added, tapping the second. The room tilted. "My father worked," Lila began, stopped, started again, the sentence surprising her like a friend in an airport. "He worked here?" "At our first property," Victoria said. "He wrote a letter to my father in 1998, a memo, really, about safety, about staff meals and relief valves and the dignity of rest. My father filed it. He did not like to be told the obvious by people he did not pay to be obvious. I found it this morning in a box I labeled, 'Regrets I Can Still Fix.'" The second reveal arrived on quiet feet and sat between them. Lila felt joy and sorrow collide in her chest like the front of one season meeting the last of another. "He never told me," she said, laughing once through the ache. "He would have. He would have said, 'Don't make a fuss.'" "Fuss saves lives sometimes," Victoria said. "I am not good at apology. I've practiced money in the places where apology should live. But let me try a simple sentence. I should have built this then. I didn't. Help me build it now." Lila held the photo with both hands. The men in it were alive in the way photos preserve. They were the age they would always be in that square. Her father's grin was unstoppable. "He would have liked to be right," she said. "He liked being right if it fed someone." "It will," Victoria said. "It is." They stood there for a minute, not on either side of a desk, two women with everything to prove to people who'd forgotten how to be impressed. Then the phone on the desk buzzed. Renee's voice arrived out of the air. "Miss Perez, Ms. Crest. I'm sorry, security called. Caldwell is in the lobby with men from Hexley. They're asking for a tour." "Of course they are," Victoria murmured, eyes alight. "Lila? Let's host them," Lila said, slipping the photo into her pocket like a small yes. They rode the elevator together. On the way down, Victoria looked at her and said, "Rye, wear whatever makes you feel like a blade." "I brought my whole knife block," Lila said. And Victoria laughed once, surprised and real. In the lobby, Caldwell had arranged himself like a docent. The Hexley men looked like confidants in suits. Lila shook their hands like they were guests checking in late. Warm. Efficient, not dazzled. "Happy to show you how we're making rooms," she said. "We start in the kitchen." Caldwell blinked as if expecting the tour would begin with the penthouse and chandeliers. She took them where safety lived, to the heat and the noise and the place where staff ate before service like soldiers breaking bread. Chef Miriam handed them hairnets and the kind of look that made children sit up straight. Omar explained the socks. Hector showed the relief valves. A housekeeper held up her hand and said simply, "We keep each other safe." The suited men, for once, forgot how to interrupt. By the time they returned to the lobby, the men's faces had shifted half an inch toward human. Caldwell tried one last move, something about efficiency and optics and polishing the brass on the Titanic. But the metaphor collapsed under the weight of the actual ship. "We like your returns when they are not technical," one Hexley man said to Caldwell, tone bland and unsmiling. "We prefer our consultancies after deals, not before. Best of luck," which was shark for we're out. They left. Caldwell stood, suddenly alone in a crowd. He straightened his tie, then his mouth. "This isn't over," he said to no one in particular and everyone at once. "It's never over," Lila said, and didn't mean hopeless. She meant the work continues. "That's the point." He looked at her like a man who couldn't believe he'd lost a game to someone who refused to play it. He walked away then, and the hotel did not turn to watch him go because the hotel was busy being alive. Leela stood under the chandelier. The light reflected 100 times in 100 glass branches. In each shard of brightness she caught a different small piece of herself. Waitress and manager and daughter. relief valve and building, tired and ready. She reached into her pocket and touched the old Polaroid. She thought of her father's letter, written in a break room 30 years ago on paper that assumed nobody would read it. She thought of her note to Jonah at 5 in the morning on a pad that assumed nobody would keep it. She thought of the way safety isn't a promise but a practice, a thing you choose every day until it becomes the ground you walk on. Back to work, Renee asked from behind her, holding a clipboard like a shield and a love letter. Back to work, she said. She crossed the lobby and opened the cry door. Sunlight poured down the corridor like permission. Somewhere upstairs a guest laughed. In the kitchen, a timer dinged. In housekeeping, a new pack of socks thumped down into the drawer, strawberries beaming, and somewhere in the city, in a church basement that smelled like bad coffee and brave people, a chair waited for the man who would take it tonight and say his name again like a prayer you whisper and then learn to sing.